Republican stalwart of the Senate, the longest continuous-serving senator in Washington for 4 decades. And yet, in our third story in the countdown tonight, Senator Ted Stevens of Alaska is officially out of a job, meaning there are now 56 Democratic members of the Senate, which, together with the independent caucus votes of Senators Lieberman and Sanders, puts the party just 2 seats away from a filibuster-proof majority. Anchorage Mayor Mark Begich won his seat with 3,700 votes over incumbent Republican Senator and convicted felon Ted Stevens. Stevens conceded the race this afternoon, deciding against any bid for a recount, saying in part, quote, "It is apparent the election has been decided and Mayor Begich has been elected." He added, "I am proud of the campaign we ran and regret that the outcome was not what we had hoped for. I am deeply grateful to Alaskans for allowing me to serve them for 40 years in the U.S. Senate. It has been the greatest honor of my life to work with Alaskans of all political persuasions to make this state that we all love a better place. I wish Mayor Begich and his family well. My staff and I stand willing to help him prepare for his new position." With Alaska now decided, all focus turns to the 2 Senate races that still remain TBD. President Bill Clinton headed to Georgia today to stump for Democratic challenger Jim Martin, hoping to boost his chances in the December runoff election against incumbent Republican Senator Saxby Chambliss. Clinton riled up the crowd by playing off Chambliss's claim that he needs to be elected to be a firewall against a Democratic filibuster-proof majority.
Unprecedented problems. But we don't need a firewall, we need a bridge. Martin's the bridge, Chambliss is the firewall. This is not rocket science. 2 weeks ago, people voted for the bridge. Don't let Georgia put a firewall up in front of the bridge.
The incumbent, for his part, was not bothered by the presidential appearance.
I sure am glad I've got the National Rifle Association standing with me rather than Bill Clinton.
Presumably, Mr. Chambliss feels the same way about Al Gore, who heads to Georgia to stump for Martin on Sunday. And in Minnesota, where incumbent Republican Senator Norm Coleman officially has 215 more votes than Democratic challenger Al Franken, a mandated recount is now underway. 2.9 million ballots must be counted by hand by December the 5th. Still to be determined what happens to an untold number of absentee ballots that were rejected in the original election. A judge ruled today that Al Franken can at least see the information on the rejected ballots from Ramsey County, but there's still no decision on similar ballots in Minnesota's other 86 counties. With Senator Stevens now out of the Senate, it's looking pretty thin and young on the Republican side of the center aisle. Stevens, along with retiring New Mexico Senator Pete Domenici, former Tennessee Senator Trent Lott, former Mississippi Senator Trent Lott, disgraced Idaho Senator Larry Craig, and retiring Virginia Senator John Warner were some of the most senior Republican members of the Senate. With them gone, the mantle of seniority falls to Senator Dick Lugar of Indiana and Senator Orrin Hatch, who were both elected in 1976. Joining us now, Aaron Billings, Associate Editor with Roll Call. And Aaron, thanks for your time tonight.
Thanks for having me.
40 years he served in the Senate. Is Senator Ted Stevens dethroning indicative of his own status as a convicted felon, or indicative of, as, I don't know, a soon-to-be Senator Mark Begich says, Alaska's desire for change?
Well, I think it's probably a little bit of both. The former, probably more than the latter. I mean, certainly this is a guy who was just convicted on 7 felony counts. He's been embattled for some time. But look, Democrats have been looking at Alaska for some time. They've wanted to turn Alaska blue, or at least purple. As you know, Governor Sarah Palin talks about being a reformer, talks about, trying to change the way that Alaska does politics. Alaska's a place that has been home to a lot of politicians with corrupt backgrounds. So Stevens, he had some headwinds going into this race, regardless of those convictions. But I will say that he really did kind of put the nail in the coffin for himself. 5
of the most senior Republican senators will not be part of the 111th Congress. Who among the returning ranks will fill those shoes?
It's going to be tough. I mean, there's a lot of change going on in the Senate right now. You mentioned some of the retiring members, like John Warner from Virginia, Pete Domenici from New Mexico, revered members who have been around for a long, long time, institutionalists. These are guys that really understand how the place works. They understand how to make a deal. They understand how to legislate. So they will be sorely missed. But don't be confused. I mean, there are a lot of seasoned hands in the Senate that will be able to carry forward. And as I always say, when these guys come over, whether they're from the House or they're former governors or they're just, rookies to the political system, they all become Senatized at some point, and they learn how to kind of get the things done that need to get done, and they learn how to legislate. But, you know, it is a changing time, and especially in the Republican field. I mean, they're looking at, you know, having, 41 seats at this point, maybe 43 if they're lucky. And there's a lot of new faces, there's a lot of new blood, and there's going to be a learning curve.
Could the loss of senior statesmen actually help the GOP in the long run? I mean, by giving that party an aura of change, or are the current crop of Republican senators simply too conservative to own that mantle?
You know, I think that change is going to come no matter what. You know, I don't know if you can say that losing these elder statesmen is what the party needs, as much as this is what's going to happen to the party anyway. I mean, there are new faces, and these elder statesmen are gone. They're retiring. You know, some have passed away, and they're just not there anymore to lead the charge. There are no, you know, there are still some old bulls, but there aren't a lot of them. And some of these newbies are going to be the new face of the party, whether or not Republicans want it or, you know, or want it or if they don't. You know, but the Republicans are in a transition mode. You know that. They're trying to figure out their way. They're trying to figure out what their message is going to be, what their strategy is going to be, who is going to be their standard bearer. They haven't figured that out yet. And so, you know, time will tell. But I really don't think they have a choice at this point in the game, because there are so many new faces.
With Stevens' ouster, Democrats are now, with the 2 independent senators' votes, 2 seats away from a filibuster-proof majority. Could moderate Republicans like Maine, Susan Collins, and Olympia Snowe, could they suddenly become incredibly powerful as the Democrats try to hit 60 on key issues? Or on issues like health care and defense, does it even matter if Obama has to face conservative Democrats and the hawkish Joe Lieberman that he's not going to get close to begin with?
I think regardless of 60, Barack Obama is going to need bipartisanship, and I think he knows it. I think that's why he's reaching out now. I think that's why he's talking about having Republicans in his administration. But you talk about these 2 senators from Maine, Susan Collins and Olympia Snowe. Look, these women were hot commodities before the Republicans lost more seats, and they're going to be even hotter commodities in the next Congress. Harry Reid, the majority leader in the Senate, is going to probably give them a lot of love. So, you know, I have no doubt that there is going to be a big premium put on some of those moderate senators who really are required to get anything done.
Aaron Billings, Associate Editor of Roll Call, a pleasure talking with you tonight.
Thanks for having me, David.